0. Okay, it looks like we're recording now.
Oh,
Hey,
yeah.
Becky. How's your day going?
It was a busy day so far. It's only one, but I took my dog to the vet for her final round of puppy shots. I have already booked a couple of meetings with people who I know and people I don't know to talk about like what's going on. So a friend of mine who started off as an exchange student in the US for his undergraduate ended up staying through for a PhD. So I'm going to be talking with him tonight to kind of get his take on everything that's happening. And then also I connected with an IUP alum. IUP is where I went to college. Through IUP's statement that they just made on their Instagram, which while it wasn't perfect, it was not perfect wording. But again, it's like that whole conversation we keep having that like, for some reason, we as white people, as the power in the institutions, just, we don't have the right language all the time to talk about this stuff. And we want to do something, but we keep putting our feet in our mouths and everyone calls us out. And then we're like, I don't know what to do. You're damned if you do, or you're damned if you don't. So,
Well, what was so problematic about the language in the message?
So overall, it was really good. It was like, we own up to the fact that like we have done wrong by our past students and our present students. We want to make sure that we do right by our future students. But the problematic language was in the caption where it said, as a result of the actions of the past few days, which I get how that is triggering. And so this individual who like called me out on my stuff was like, yeah, of course, Becky, you're all support, which I get it. My name's Becky. Like, I get it. I am white. I understand his frustration. So I immediately responded back, which I never get into Instagram conversations with anyone because you can't understand anything. But I just said, hey, like, just so you know, like, I'm on your side, and I know that I don't look like I am, and I look like I'm a token Instagrammer who's like, hashtag social justice. And I know that IUP is just jumping on the trend. Like, if other institutions weren't doing this, IUP would have never put out that statement because IUP has a history of incredibly racist policies. I myself worked together with my then boyfriend and a faculty member to put together a grant proposal to help bring support to first generation Latino students at our school because we noticed the dropout numbers were just outrageous. And so since the school kept saying, no, we don't have funding, no, we can't do this, we just went and got the funding ourselves to start our mentorship group. And so I told this guy, I'm like, hey, like, I understand IUP administration pretends to hear you and nothing really happens, but like, let's meet and let's talk and let's figure out like, what were your struggles? I can talk about what were my struggles. And then we can get other leaders together from the different organizations that represent students of color to really make a proposal to say, hey, you guys are saying you want to talk about this. Here are our ideas. Like, here is what you can do as an institution to address the history of racist policies in your institution and also make sure that your institution's a safer place for the future. And now I know people are responding to my stuff now saying, oh yeah, that's a bunch of baloney. We tried. I tried too. I understand. It's disheartening. I'm not ready to give up though. And if IUP is like, we're trying, let's at least give them credit for trying and then hold them accountable for what they're saying.
I do believe that it is possible to both hold people and institutions accountable, but then also support where you can. So yeah, I don't like, basically this morning, like, mind you, I'm not even checking social media. I'm not checking the media.
I tried and I gave it.
No, wait, let me finish. Okay. Like, I'm at a point where it doesn't matter if I don't watch the news. It doesn't matter if I don't, go on any social media. If many of you out there, if you're like me, you keep getting all these emails from anything you've ever signed up for. I mean, I get emails from spas that I might have gone to one time. If I went to acupuncture twice for somewhere, I've gotten their, like, both their COVID and their racial injustice emails. And then this morning I got an email from my alma mater. My undergrad alma mater is U of I, and it was, like, okay, I'm like reading it on my phone now, like where it's like they're talking about, they're referencing George Floyd. They're talking about the COVID-19 pandemic. They also mention Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, la 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 la. It keeps going down a list, and then they talk about black and brown people, just being able to be sensitive to the issues that people in these communities are going through. Like they say, black and brown communities. And then toward the end, because it's a multi-paragraph email, like where does it, toward the end it goes, like, only then we will reach our full potential as the Illini community, as a country, and as the human race. And it's like, Illini, and I remember how controversial that mascot was at my school. And I don't know right now exactly whether or not the mascot is still active, but the fact is you're still using like the Illini name. And I don't normally do this, but then I emailed the Alumni Association, which sent this out, just to let them know like how, like just, it was only a few sentences, but I let them know how I felt about it. Because otherwise it would have been a strong email. But then again, just like so many other higher ed institutions, I know how they have dropped the ball. With that said, I thought a lot about, like, yes, I did respond to that email to let the Alumni Association know how I felt, but then it also did make me think about all the great people and all the great learning experiences I had while being at U of I. And so what I decided to do was go onto the website, look at the different funds they have, and they have a couple funds. There's one that's specifically to support students who've been impacted by COVID-19, and I don't know exactly how they're defining that. I'm sure there's a way to find out, but there's like some, like many other institutions, or at least I'm hoping many other institutions, there's some type of COVID-19 fund to support students, and then there's just a general emergency fund with the dean. That's not specific to COVID, but again, is meant to support students in all types of emergencies. Like I'm here to support, the students there. From what I've been reading, the class of 2023 is the most diverse class they've had in a variety of ways. And so that is one more step in the right direction for that institution. Mm-hmm. But I'm also not going to just forget all the like symbolic and, daily discrimination that has happened there too. But it's taken me 14 years to donate after I graduated.
Oh, I know. And the thing is, like, IUP State, I mean, they even linked to the Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack and said, watch this, like, understand what Peggy McIntosh is saying, because this is so much bigger than the horrible things that happened on our campus. Like, I'm not going to go into them because they're very traumatic for the people of color who experience these things. So I'm not going to mention them specifically. You can just Google IUP racism if you want to see. But it doesn't erase any of that, and it doesn't absolve the institution of any of those things. And also the wording, again, wasn't perfect. But I really am comparing the university's reaction to this situation and their reaction to previous situations. I can tell there's a difference, because it seems like they're actually providing resources and they're actually thinking about things. And in a weird way, they're inviting us all to hold them accountable to that in the statement. So were you overall very satisfied with what U of I Alumni Association did, or are you overall dissatisfied? Did that last mess up?
Well, it makes me more committed to the students, right?
Yeah. Yes.
It makes me more committed to the students who, like, especially with me working in this field of higher ed, it's, just knowing how their education has been interrupted, the different traumas that people have had to manage, the new responsibilities, especially as you're trying to balance your home life. If there is in fact an established home for you, that might not be the case.
Yeah, good
like,
point.
So that's like, you know, how I feel about it. It's really, so it really just sparked more of my desire to support the students there. And how I feel about the institution. I mean, look, I'm proud of my affiliation there, but I, you know, as with any other connection that where I have one of pride and love, I do call people out if they in a like a very like, and I mean, when I say call out, I don't necessarily mean in a mean way. Like, I was very direct, professional. I let them know like what the institution meant to me and to my family, because I'm not the only person in my family who's gone to that university.
Yeah,
But that's all the more reason why I like demand that the university or that the alumni association be better.
exactly.
Oh, sorry, go on.
No, I mean, when I was working with the mentor program, or when I put it together with my colleagues at IUP, the big thing is that we wanted to figure out how could we create a campus where first generation Latino students felt welcomed, because that was one of the biggest reasons for dropout, was because there was no place for them. They lumped all of the Latino students into the African American Cultural Center, which is where they also lumped all the first generation white students who were on scholarships. So if you were poor or if you were a scholarship recipient, everything was funneled through the African American Cultural Center at that point, which at a certain time may have been the correct approach, and it may have been the community supported approach. But while I was there, I just saw it heightening racial tensions and creating a space in which it felt almost antagonistic, because people of different backgrounds were forced to go to the African American Cultural Center, where everything was 100% about African American pride, Afro pride, Black pride. There were no spaces within that building that were dedicated to other groups of people of color. And also, again, pointing out that they were putting first generation white students into that as well, which again is well-meaning. I understand, like, they needed a place to put these kids who are on scholarships for their like mentoring and all of that, but it didn't address the specific cultural needs of the groups, which is why, since my area has always been in Latin American studies and working with transnational populations, that's why we were working specifically with the Latino students. But the campus environment was still antagonistic. We were trying to create a safe space for these students to be able to talk about like how tough it is to know that you're supposed to be home helping your mom raise your siblings, but you have to study, and like you can't go home every weekend to help because you need to study or rest.
I mean, and yeah, and it's exactly those types of things that like I've had in mind. And I mean, from just being the person who's donating, there also has to be a degree of trust to that. Like, you know, where exactly are the funds going to? How do they discern who's getting what funds? But I also want to talk about
weird pot.
What?
So it's just not going into this random pot that they're earmarked for certain. What is it called?
It's for
I can't remember what that stands.
It's like restricted funds. Like there are for that specific fund. It wasn't. I know advancement offices love unrestricted, but that is not what this is. I wanted to also ask though, because I know that, was it on Tuesday night that you went to a march?
Yeah, I think it was Tuesday. Everything's all blurred together at this point. I can't even tell what day is what, but yes, clearly my dog is also emotional right now. Yes, I did go to the Vigil in Manchester, and I'm so glad I went. And if I'm not going to go into tons and tons of specifics, because again, Lindsay and I are trying to figure out how to make these conversations not go on for a whole long hour. The Vigil itself was so beautiful, and the speakers were all different ages. There were high school graduates who were on their way to pursue degrees in nursing. There were people who are new to the Manchester area. There are people who've been there their whole lives. It was an incredible gathering that I wasn't expecting to see in Manchester, and it was very peaceful. Everyone was trying to stay socially distant. the police were very respectful. I actually afterwards, because one of the big messages of the speech that was given towards the end was make sure you go home and have conversations. If you are here and you are an ally, be an ally in every aspect of your life. And that means raising those conversations and having them, because it's really, really, really important that you spread our stories and talk about the importance of the change that is necessary. And as I was leaving, was a group of kids in front of me, and they were heading out too. And they passed one of the cops, and they stopped dead in their tracks. And the one kid went, hey, hold on, guys. He turned around and went up to the cop and was like, hey, can I get your opinion on what's going on? Like, I really want to know what you're thinking right now. And it was so cool because I didn't know if I was going to see that, because everyone wasn't leaving rah, rah, rah down with the system. It was, let's figure out how we can heal and right the wrongdoings, right? But backing up before I got there, I needed to pick up a candle, and I was like, where am I going to pick up a candle? And so I was like, oh, I'll just go to the grocery store. The Goya section always has the novena candles, right? So I was going to stop at the Market Basket that's off of South Willow. Again, I had no idea what was in the news because I hadn't been looking at it. Turns out there was some guy who had posted an event to do a counter protest to protect all of the businesses on South Willow Street from the looters, right? Guys, now he was charged with inciting things, and I don't know all the specifics, but he was arrested. But the people still went. So as I turned off of South Willow, all of the businesses were boarded up. Everything. And then people were tailgating, white people were tailgating in parking lots of all of the businesses. And again, not local businesses. We're talking about big multinational companies like CVS, DSW Shoes, Petco, Michaels. Like, okay, so I was first confused because people were tailgating outside of businesses because I wasn't putting two and two together. And then I saw a group of at least 20 men wearing bulletproof vests circled up in an auto parts store parking lot, military style. Civilians. That's when I called my friend who I was going to be meeting up with to be like, hey, full transparency, I'm seeing a group of dudes that looks real scary. And then I looked off to the side where Taco Bell was. There was a group of 5 individuals with what to me looked like automatic rifles. I don't know what automatic rifles look like from non-automatic rifles, but we're talking big guns slung over their shoulders outside of a Taco Bell.
Yeah.
That was when I realized, and I'm still meditating on this because I still don't fully grasp this idea, and I really want to have a conversation with these gunslingers because they're willing to publicly display that they are 100% ready to defend the Taco Bell. Which, if you haven't done some research on the background of Taco Bell and you're watching this, you should, because it's like the epitome of American cultural appropriation. But they want their $1 tacos more than they want to denounce the murdering of Black Americans. And that is still a really hard concept for me to just deal with. And it actually showed me how massive this problem is. Like, I didn't know that people in my state would prefer to defend a Taco Bell.
I mean, and again, you know, like you and I had this conversation. We've had this forever of the, like, you know, I kind of have that perspective of like, I'm not surprised. Like, I've seen stuff like this before. Here's my question, like, because, you know, for people that are listening to us for the first time, so like, you know, Becky's based in New Hampshire, so you're talking about Manchester, New Hampshire. You know, I'm curious, who goes, was it actually was this march actually sponsored by like Black Lives Matter? Okay, so
yeah, so it was organized by Black Lives Matter Manchester. Most
who goes? Are they like? I'm thinking, you know, I think for people especially who don't live in New Hampshire, don't live in New England, people just imagine a white state. What does like who the heck was at this vigil or this march?
So Manchester is one of the few towns. Manchester and Salem, New Hampshire tend to be the two that people point to when they want to talk about where there's diversity. Because my town is almost 100% white. But Manchester does have a sizable Black population, very large Spanish-speaking population as well. A lot of Afro-Latinos. Again, these are all terms that people, especially Latinos, kind of struggle with, like what my identity, all of those things, because everyone wants to go skin color, I'm white, right? It doesn't work when you're Latino, and it doesn't always work when you're Black either. Like, your identity is your identity. Here's an awkward conversation, I'm struggling through it. Anyhow, so at this vigil, it was a vigil. It was not a march. It was not a protest. It was a beautiful vigil. It was mostly white people, but it was a pretty mixed crowd for New Hampshire.
And how would you when you're saying, okay, what would you estimate was the population? You may or may, I mean, I don't expect you to have stats off the top of your head.
I think they said there was like 500 or 600 people there. I can't remember. I should have pulled the article up. Okay. But I would say probably, like, off the top of my head, probably a quarter to maybe 1/3 of the population was probably Black, and the rest was mixed between white and other races. But it was very interesting watching all of the people who look like me kind of go, damn. As, like, we listed names for 5 minutes of Black men and women who have been killed by cops, murdered by cops. I mean, we went all the way back to Emmett Till, which there are people before Emmett Till, of course, but, like, Emmett Till is, like, the one that everyone, like, points to, right? I
actually was going to ask, did you go as far back as Emmett Till? But yeah, and yeah, these are the ones that make headlines, not necessarily the ones that never make news, right?
And then they shouted out, if you know any other names we need to repeat that have not made the news. So then people were sharing names of their friends and family who have been murdered. It was moving.
Yeah.
It was sad.
I mean, if that's how it went in, say, like, you know, where people are adding names of people they know in New Hampshire, I'm trying to imagine, like, say if you went to a city with a larger population like Chicago, or, you know, what does that, we would still be you know, that vigil would still be going on right now.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so no, thanks for sharing. Was there anything else about the vigil that you wanted to share?
I think that was kind of the biggest point, is that for me as a participant, I was on my way and I was faced with this image of lots of men who were armed, and it was largely white men. There were some women, but it was mostly men with their tailgates down, with Yeti coolers, with a gun, hanging out in front of a CVS.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to find the wherewithal to push through all of that and feel like, okay, have confidence in the organizers of this event. I had to have confidence in the police who were there to protect the vigil. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to trust. This all looks scary. I should probably go home, but I'm going to trust this is all going to be okay. Because it gave me a glimpse. Again, I've had a couple of these instances in my life, but it gave me another one of those glimpses for what it must feel like to be a person of color and to be afraid to be out in your community. So that was another thing that just pushed me over the edge. I was like, I'm feeling scared, and that means I need to go.
Which is also interesting, because I mean, yeah, right now we are in tense times, but, you know, I'll even say, as I'm hearing that story, I'm thinking, well, if it was majority white people in that crowd, I don't necessarily see that going down the same way like other protests.
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
Right? Or other vigils, I should say.
So we discussed this, I think, in the last episode, where I was waiting for friends to offer to come with me, right? And I started reaching out to people like, you can come to my house if stuff goes down, but, like, sorry, like, I'm not going. It's too scary. And one of my friends who was gonna go, but she had other things she had to do that night. She does a lot of social justice work, so, like, she was allowed to have the night off. She gave me the best advice ever. She said, when I go to a protest, or I go to a march, or I go to a demonstration, or I go anywhere where I have to go by myself because no one will go with me, I look in the crowd for someone who has kids, or I find someone who looks safe. And again, looks safe, meaning someone who has their arms open and is full of love, like emanating love, I guess is how she put it. And just say, hey, I'm here by myself. Any chance I can just hang with you so I'm not alone? And that's what I did. As soon as I got out of my car, I noticed there were a whole bunch of people that were all heading in the same direction holding candles. So I knew that, and I bought an extra candle when I was at the market basket. So I brought the extra candle with me. And I saw a woman who was on her way, and I'm like, hey, are you going to the vigil? Because I'm going and I have an extra candle. Do you want my candle? And so we struck up a conversation, and it was wonderful. So if you are alone, like I was, which was kind of nerve-wracking, but there are amazing people at these events. So if you're nervous and you can't find friends to go with, go and make a friend. It's scary because in our society, we're so used to like texting and hiding behind a screen before we meet people, just like that's how we date now, right? Like all of our dating is this like meet over text first, not this, hey, you're at this thing that I care about and we're both going to be at this thing.
Right now, text is all we have for dating, if we're to be honest. I mean, I know there are people doing socially distanced dates, but yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, so I mean, okay, you went to this march and, you know, or this vigil, again, I keep calling it a march, but it's a vigil. Okay, and then I guess what's the next step? Like, or like what, okay, or you know, like, okay, there's all this momentum, all these people came together.
So I actually sent a message to Black Lives Matter, me and Chester, and said, hey, I want to do something in my town. What advice do you have? Which was, I think, the best thing to do because I don't know what to do. And they're an organization just did this. So I just went out on a whim and messaged them. And they messaged me immediately back. And they said, first of all, we really recommend that it be led by an organization that represents Black people, which I was like, totally, like, I don't know. So they recommended I reach out to the NAACP to see if there's any support there. I also reached out to our local library because our library in my town is a wonderful, wonderful place. And I got a phone call today from the director of the library. He said, unfortunately, I'm not allowed to like hold the event here, but wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Here's a whole bunch of local organizations that do events at our library that know what you need to do. And also here's some people in the police and at town hall you can reach out to. So I'm in the process right now of figuring out how to have a local event here. And also tomorrow there is a vigil in Nashua at 6 p.m. So if you're in the New Hampshire area, feel free to message me if you want to hang out, socially distant, of course. I will be wearing a mask. But I'll be in Nashua tomorrow at 6 p.m. standing with Black Lives Matter and NAACP again. And I'm luckily bringing along a couple friends this time. I'm really, really happy about that. So that's what I'm doing right now.
So this is like, you know, I hear this and I'm thinking, okay, so the goals to me sound like awareness, community building, you know, where does it, because people are like, okay, what could I do? Because I do think there is definitely a need for the awareness, for the community building. Where then does it become like, okay, there's obviously been more than one case like this. I mean, understatement of the century of the so where does it then become, hey, this is the impact I want to make on this, like after that, the impact on the system, like whether it's legislation or just what else, you know.
So what I'm thinking locally, like in my town, and I'm going on camera saying this stuff, and again, I don't know if it's smart to do it, but like, I don't feel safe putting a Black Lives Matter sign outside of my house.
Really?
So,
okay.
I don't. My neighbors are gun carrying, knife making, and I know my neighbors are going to see this too, but I have not seen any public support for the Black Lives Matter movement in my community. I have seen Blue Lives Matter flags. I have seen Trump propaganda. And so the messages I've been receiving from my neighbors since I moved into this town is, this is Blue Lives Matter, right? All lives matter. And so I am hesitant to put a sign in my yard because I'm worried about my own safety, which again goes back to the core issues that we've been talking about. Like, this is ridiculous. And I know as a member of this town, would feel safer putting that sign if I knew there were more people in my community that would support me, that would come to my defense if someone showed up at my house with a militia to rip the sign out of my yard.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know if I'm feeling like that, I know there's other people in my town that feel like that or even more scared. So that's why I feel like having some type of a public demonstration in my town is so incredibly important, because I need to network with the people in my town who feel strongly about this. And I need to feel safe putting a sign in my yard so that when people pass by my yard, they know where I stand. I need to have conversations with them, but I'm still so angry. I don't want to push that the wrong way. So I'm waiting until I'm not angry. Right now, I'm just getting myself surrounded with people who are willing to have these conversations and are open. I'm not forcing the conversations yet because I don't have the energy right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And
so trying to build this visible support, I think, is really important in my community, and getting more active in local politics. A friend of mine suggested school board. I'm thinking about it. I truly am thinking about running for office, or finding people who want to run for office on the right platforms and supporting them like crazy, No,
I mean, no, thanks for sharing that. I know we might have like 5 to 10 minutes left, I guess, because yeah, you've just like, here I am, like moderating, facilitating. And so I do want to, I mean, we could always talk more at another time about this, but like, I'm exhausted. Part of it is my treatment. Part of it is all of the stuff that we've just been talking about, the pandemic, work, la 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 la, and then trying to figure out, like, how do I make an impact? And I feel like this week it's been, one, the dialogues, and then two, the donations to, like, not just my alma mater, but even to like other funds.
Yeah, I donated to an emergency grocery delivery service in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Like, that's what I did today.
Because you're from like,
I'm from Pennsylvania. Yeah. This was started by an IUP alum. So,
but I guess in terms of just self-care, like for me, for me, the best self-care right now has been relaxing, realizing I really need to clean my apartment. It's the thing that has been neglected the most as I've been doing everything I have with, again, my treatment and work. And I guess what is it for, like meditation, sure, I'll get to that when I get to it, but sometimes they're just, for me,
meditation's first. Meditation should be first, and that. Yeah. It is.
I mean, sometimes it's, you're right. Well, I think it's listening to my body and what I think I need most. And part of what my body needs is to have a clean apartment. And sometimes I think it's not also just what you do, but how you do it. Like, how could any mundane thing you do be meditative?
Mindfulness in action.
What did you say?
Mindfulness in action. So like when I don't want to clean, which is like, I wrote down, I'm behind in all of my chores, and I feel bad because I'm not holding up my end of the bargain here in my marriage because I'm so consumed right now. Because sweet joke, Disease and Sorry says white woke people are exhausting. Yeah, I know I'm exhausting, poor Chris. But anyway, when I do decide to finally fold clothes, I am 100% focused on the clothes and folding them or washing the dishes. Like, you can turn any activity you do into a mindful activity. That means literally paying attention to the things you see, the things you smell, the things you taste, the things you touch. Like, when you use the things you hear, not in your head, but like the stuff around you, that helps to pull you out of your head. So when you're practicing mindfulness in your everyday actions, like when you're driving to work, when you're on the T, T's the Boston Public Transportation System for anyone not local, anything you do, it can be mindful. So while you're cleaning your apartment today, that can be a mindful meditative act. It doesn't have to be sitting around going, I'm so enlightened.
Well, no. You know what's funny though? I want to bring this up because, especially with me having gone through my medical treatment, And you might have remembered this on the WhatsApp group I had you added on, or no, this was a while back, so you might not have remembered, but like right after my mastectomy in the following weeks, like I noticed that sometimes people were giving me tidbits on mindfulness, but actually my friend who has like a rehab counseling background, I remember in the WhatsApp group, and this is where I also just want to make a distinction how sometimes mindfulness is the thing, sometimes it's not the thing you need. Where sometimes when a trauma is really fresh, like in this case, it was having an organ from my body removed, one where there's a lot of emotional attention. In some ways, like meditating, it's like, oh no, that is not the thing for me right now. And again, because I was like, I almost was feeling like, oh, is it that I'm not doing it right? But my friend said, when a trauma's fresh, it might not be she would argue it's not the thing for you. I mean, for
That's
me,
really poignant.
I'm gonna say it depends. It again, like I might not be an expert in this, but this is something where she had more of a background. And so, yeah, like for a while, it didn't seem like meditation was the best thing,
Okay.
but in some ways, like prayer was. But again, I think prayer is also such a unique thing because people go into prayer with different types of intentions. They have different relationships with whatever divine power they believe in. For some people like myself, a prayer might be more of a dialogue, or there may also be requests. And so I do think the nature, like again, if it's prayer, I think the nature of someone's relationship to the higher power will impact what it does for you. And then I also think, again, with meditation or like just mindfulness, you kind of have to figure out like where am I right now? Because meditation is a tool in the toolbox. It's not the only tool. And I think depending on where someone is with trauma, I mean, it's kind of interesting. Sometimes I wonder, like, especially, with any type of trauma, I wonder if in some ways it helps us survive to disconnect from our bodies. I'm not saying that as a strong statement. I'm saying I wonder.
There's a lot of research that's being done on the benefits of psychoactive drugs. Is that psychoactive? Is that the right word? I don't even know if I'm but like using mushrooms and acid and other types of hallucinatory drugs to manage trauma. Clearly the research is difficult because they're using controlled substances. However, there have been a number of studies that are really interesting about exploring how it's kind of like hitting reset on your brain, especially if you are going through trauma, because it allows you that full break from like actual cognition. I have not read the studies. I know there's books on it and podcasts and the like. But as you're saying, like being in that feeling is hard. So what are the other things that are in your toolkit? I have a list of things that I wrote down, but I want to know what's in your toolkit.
Jeez. Well, so here's the thing, and this is actually something that I've discussed with different people, is that because of this pandemic, some of the things that would typically be in my toolkit are not accessible or safe to me right now. So for example, I was even told with cancer treatment by one of my doctors that, acupuncture could be good. And I said, I loved acupuncture even before I got this diagnosis, but now I can't really do it, And she was just trying to encourage me and say, oh, sometime in the future it will be possible, but right now acupuncture isn't one. I love getting massages. That's not happening right now. I like to go, like I had a few memberships to different museums, and when I travel, I like going to museums. That's not an option right now. And so I also just want to acknowledge right now that, as we are encouraging self-care, I am someone who knows what it feels like to have like all these tools I've had for myself just be removed from me. And I would even say sometimes when I used to go to bars and watch basketball games, someone might say, oh, like someone might not think of a bar as self-care, but they might just think, oh, that'll get you close to alcohol and that's not good. But no, when I used to live in another town around here, the bartenders knew me. Like for me, the bar and watching basketball games was community. And we all know right now basketball games are not happening. So, yeah, I think, and, I do have a lot of books. Like, if you come to my apartment, I have a lot. There's so many I could read, but really my heart and mind haven't been into reading. So yeah, you know what that's like. And so I mean, I do like going for walks, but then as I've explained to different friends, sometimes when I'm going on the walk, I'll get annoyed if I see people not wearing masks or not social distancing.
Because you live in a city where I
So,
live in a rural area. I don't pass anyone when I go for a walk.
but see, I don't want to say like, especially having grown up in Chicago, it's not like I live in the densest neighborhood. It is like it's a suburb right outside of the city where depending where within the suburb you are, it could feel more suburban, it could feel more urban. I do believe it is a town that has more green space than others, but I mean, but to me, it's not even. It's just like okay, like I understand that you might not want the mask on all the time, but could you at least like put it down and then when you see someone pull it up, like when I see that someone doesn't even do that, or I saw a group of preteen boys playing basketball and they clear. I mean that on the streets and for many reasons that just isn't safe right now. But yeah, I will say that's why it's like, maybe washing my dishes could be my tool. Or even just watching shows. Like for me, I'm like kind of running out of shows where it's like, okay, I've watched this show, I've watched that show, but then I also need another stimulus. Like it can't just be the same, let me like lie in my bed and watch a show.
You
So
like to switch things up. You're someone who likes to switch things up for
yeah,
your out, like your activities and stuff. I always thought that was really interesting. So you never went to the same place every weekend. You were someone who was like, this week I'm going to this museum. This week I'm going to this like art show. This week I'm going to this concert. Like it was all over the place. I thought that was always really interesting because I like the familiar. I like repetition. I am an
like
introvert.
variety.
Yeah,
I like variety.
I like the same thing. So like I'm in the process right now of like, so I have a room that it's transformed a million uses, and in remote learning it became my room where I worked, but I want to turn it into my like official hobby room because with my anxiety, even though I want to practice self-care or do something fun like a kid, like going into my room to play, right? Like we forget to play as adults because everything has to be productive, right? So I want to create like a hobby room where I can walk in and have all the things that I like to do, like ready to go. So I don't even have to think about it. All I have to do is go, I want to play. I'm going to go to my playroom so I can play.
Yeah.
Because the things that I've been finding a lot of joy in are getting back into cross stitch, which is something my mother did and still does. So I've started making like revolutionary cross stitch. It's pretty fun. You poke things. I also have gotten into hand lettering, and I've actually found that to be really, really fun. So like I'm hand lettering a word, like I wrote democracy yesterday, and like then I like brainstormed all this stuff around it. And then I got into essential oils, so now I'm like making my own like Epsom salts and like all the things, and that's been really fun for me as well. So I'm going to probably hand letter all of the different essential oils that I have and their different properties and all of that. But gardening, taking bubble baths, these are things I love to do. I'm trying to do 30 minutes of nothing each day where I literally just lay down on the deck. And last night, my 30 minutes of nothing didn't happen until like 10 o'clock. But I went outside, I laid down on the deck, and I just stared up at the sky. I invited my husband to come sit out. We didn't even talk. We just sat there. I laid, he sat there.
Yeah.
But making sure that I take some time for literally quieting down because my brain is so loud. My tinnitus or tinnitus, however it's called, is screaming. I had no idea how connected to stress that was. My
Yeah, it is.
are screaming nonstop, which is causing me to be more like, I know that it's making it harder for me to relax because I literally am hearing all the time in my head now because I'm stressed.
No, I believe it because I've also had my bouts of it. Yeah, and I guess like in just wrapping up, like, yeah, like I think like there definitely are, depending on someone's situation, whatever your tools were for self-care, you maybe this has been a chance for people to be like, oh, find joy in baking. That's not my joy. So that's really not going to be it for me. Yeah, I mean, I even remember back in early March, I was going to go to a comedy show for a comedian that I adore, but then again, people were not social distancing yet, but because I was a cancer patient, I'm like, oh no, I can't go to this show. And then of course, this same comedian ended up canceling all his like following shows because that's when COVID-19 was starting to be taken more seriously. But yeah, I think for me, I have to really I really have to reevaluate what self-care looks like aside from resting, aside from watching shows. And I think especially like now that summer is here, it's like, okay, how do I go outside more and take advantage, but in a way that's safe? And it's also a question of who do I let into my bubble and not?
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
that's the conversation we're all having. I've talked to a number of my friends that are saying that they're sitting down with their friends and saying, hey, like we want to socialize, but we have to be smart. These are the things I'm doing that make me risky. These are the things that you're doing. We all agree on these things to keep us safe. And as long as we respect these rules, we can hang out. So like friends who have kids, like they're all negotiating these relationships with not just their friends, but also their extended family. Like that's really an interesting thing that no one has actually laid a framework. We've just figured it out because we're all creative individuals who miss human connection.
no,
Except for me,
sure.
because I curl up in my house for 2 months and I'll have no
Oh,
problem with that.
oh no, no. Like I think whether someone considers themselves an introvert or extrovert, we do need human connection on some level. I mean,
That's what this is for
and
me.
exactly. And so yeah, I guess just like in the last minute or so, I'm just gonna say that yeah, I think, we've talked a lot about, just how do we support these movements around us wanting to be better allies, and do and like really like just you know just do the work that should have been done a long time ago,
And
and to do it more consistently. Do it more
holding
consistently.
every one of those companies who has sent you an email, every single education organization that I sign up for a free trial has sent me their statement on their commitment to social justice and to diversify their staff and ensure that they're actually creating culturally responsive curriculum and stuff like that. Hold those companies accountable and hold your employers accountable. Like, I think that's something that will be really helpful. I actually just shared it on my Instagram earlier today that there was a template for you to like fill out to give to your employer if they haven't yet taken a stance, or made a public, like we can link it up in the notes for this chat. So if anyone's interested in it, I didn't click into it, but it looked like it was going to be really interesting.
No, that's actually interesting. And then that actually, I think, is going to be a topic we might talk about next
Yeah.
week, because there clearly is a power dynamic with one's employer. Like, okay, if Gap, they keep send, and I'll just say this is one of the last things, but like if Gap keeps sending me like, oh, coupons and deals because they want me to buy from them, my relationship to them is like consumer to company. But if I were a Gap employee, that's a whole other ball game, and I want to acknowledge that. And it also depends where someone falls in that hierarchy of a company.
Yeah,
Exactly. But no, it was good to chat with you.
yes.
I'm gonna have to head to some other commitments, but yeah, I'll see you next week. I'll see everyone next week. Bye bye.
All right. Love you, girl. Bye.
Love you. Bye.